How you frame a situation will ultimately shape how you perceive it. If you're trying to solve a dilemma and you can't see a clearly superior choice, change the perspective from which you're looking at it. Yeah, framing. It's a term we all hear all the time, and I still don't know what it means. We'll get to that. One time when I was in my late 20s, I was struggling with a dilemma. I had just started a job where I was making more money than I had ever made before in my life. I was in a position answering directly to the president of the company, and I realized that I was being asked to do something unethical, immoral, and possibly even illegal. I was torn as to what to do. Then my father asked me a question that changed everything and made the path forward crystal clear. Welcome to the INRIS Files, presenting thoughts on culture, history, and the human condition from a very specific Generation X point of view. After working a few years at a variety of different jobs, mostly in high tech, I decided to take a break from the rat race and pursue a more noble profession, teaching. My academic credentials enabled me to easily get a teaching certificate. There was a pronounced shortage of math teachers in my area, and before long I had landed a job as a permanent substitute to teach 8th grade math at a nearby middle school. By the end of the school year, the chair of my district's math department offered me the position full-time and had even offered to use my master's degree in an unrelated subject to nonetheless count toward a higher pay scale that normally comes with the higher degree in the field you're teaching. They were very enthusiastic about hiring me, but when I did the math, pun intended, I realized that there was no way I could afford to live at that salary without having to take on a roommate, and certainly no way I could afford to replace my aging car that was on its last legs. I was genuinely honored at their faith in me, but teachers' introductory salaries at the time were simply too low, even with a bump for a higher degree, and I reluctantly had to pass. Within 3 days, I had an interview at a high-tech company where I had worked previously, and the salary that we agreed to, I hate to admit it, was well over twice what I'd been offered as a school teacher. I want to pause here to note that my grandfather had worked in public schools for most of his life, and my father and a couple of his siblings had spent at least some time working in the field of public education. It used to be a revered profession that was respected and paid very decent wages. That had changed by the time I briefly entered the field, and it's gotten even worse since then. But that's a topic for another time. I had made the decision to return to high tech, and I had landed surprisingly quickly and well. It's true, I had worked at this company before, and I'd left for legitimate reasons, but now I was higher up in the org chart, and I thought that this time things would be different. Things would be better. Within a few weeks, I had embarked upon a new project that required me to reach out to my contacts in the industry to make some deals. I noticed in my conversations with my boss, the president of the company, mind you, that something was off. He insisted he could be the only person to sign contracts with our vendors, which was unusual for a company this size. He wanted me to negotiate for the best possible deal we could get, but at the same time, he kept asking questions that implied that the company might not actually follow through and pay the bills when all was said and done. I finally asked him about that, and he asked me, well, how do I know this project will definitely work? Why would I pay if it doesn't? He was, essentially, telling me to negotiate in bad faith. He hired me not only because I had experience and success in the work my role entails, but also because of my connections in the industry, and now he was telling me to negotiate with those same connections in bad faith. Here I was, brand new to the job, being paid a higher wage than I had ever earned before, even in high tech, and a wage that any teacher with an equivalent number of years' worth of experience would be absolutely giddy to receive at the time. And the fact was that I flat out needed the money. Sure, I found this job after only a few days of giving up teaching, but giving up teaching without another job offer wasn't that much of a leap. I already couldn't afford to work at the salary they had offered. Now walking away from a real paycheck carried much more risk if I couldn't find another job soon. Besides, I'd grown up having that virtuous, puritanical American work ethic drilled into my skull. I couldn't quit after just a few weeks on the job and let down my new team because of a principle. Could I? Should I? And yet, if I negotiated contracts in bad faith with people who knew me in the industry, how long until nobody in the industry would ever work with me again? I remember the scene vividly. This was back in the days when cell phones were only recently affordable and portable enough to be practical. And I was standing on an open platform at an almost vacant T stop on the Orange Line in Boston. And I had a bit of a wait for my next train. I called my father, and I told him about my situation. As I was in my late 20s at the time, my father was in his late 40s. He had, at this point in his career, worked both as a laborer and as a manager, and at the time he was working in purchase management, so he understood all too well the ramifications of negotiating vendor contracts. He had also experienced more than his fair share of layoffs and unemployment, and had much more personal experience with financial hardship at this point in his life than I had had in mine. Your boss is the CEO? He asked. Yes. Okay. Do you think there's even the slightest chance that the CEO of that company would hesitate for so much as a second to let you go if he decided it was not in the company's best interest to keep you around? Well, no, I suppose not. And would the CEO hesitate to fire you if he knew you were stealing, or that you posed a real threat to the company's good name? Of course not. Right. Now then, you are the CEO of you, and your current source of income is an employee who is bringing in more money than any employee you've ever had before, but your employee is happy to steal if they don't want to pay for what they're getting. Your employee poses a real threat to your good name. What should you do with this employee? Yeah, I got the point. I mean, I knew what I had to do even before I asked for my father's advice. Of course I did. But I was twisted up in knots. I felt guilty. I felt like I'd be letting down people if I quit just a few weeks after taking the job. And I was worried. What if it took me too long to find the next job? But by reframing the scenario, everything came into focus. A good CEO doesn't put up with employees who steal. A good CEO doesn't keep on employees who will damage the company's reputation in the industry. As the CEO of me, I had no choice. I had to fire my best source of income, and with that new frame in mind, I did what any good CEO would do. A good CEO doesn't just let go a problem employee without first taking steps to contain the problem and set everything up for a quick, clean break. For the contracts that I was already negotiating, I made it clear to my vendors that I wanted a good discount, but that they needed to make it contingent upon payment in advance. But we're happy to give you terms. No, I told them, really. You want to make this excellent deal contingent upon full payment up front. But no, you insist. Payment in advance, and that's your final offer. I don't think they'd ever had a business deal negotiated quite like that before. It was kind of funny. And in the meantime, a resume I had submitted to a company in the Seattle area asked if I was still interested. Within a couple of weeks of making my executive decision, my ducks were all lined up in a row, I gave notice, packed my stuff, and my girlfriend Penny and I moved across the country. Yeah, I know, I didn't mention the detail about having a girlfriend earlier. Moving across the country with your girlfriend is also an interesting risk to take, but that's another story for another time. The job I took in the Seattle area paid quite a bit less than the one I left behind in Boston, although it was still more than what I'd been offered as a teacher, and it was enough to live on. And my new employer also paid for my move. My grad school classmate and former business partner, Tommy Carlo, that's also a story for another time, had a job waiting for Penny after we hit town, and the next chapter of my life had begun with a pretty clean break from what had come before. So yeah, reframing the situation can absolutely change the way you think about it, and that could be enough to make your path forward much clearer. But that particular frame change, that you are the CEO of you, that one has stuck with me. When I remember it, it's very empowering. Have you ever solved a problem by reframing it? What do you think about the idea of being the CEO of your life? Please share your stories in the comments section below, and please be kind when you engage in the conversation. Be sure to click like if you want to see more videos like this, and subscribe if you'd like to be alerted about them when I post. Thank you for checking out the INRIS Files, and we'll see you again next time.